welcome to another drawing session. So, for those who don't know, the intention for this is a guided drawing practice where we go through, I guess, the fundamentals of drawing and whatnot. My intention for these is to sort of shed light on the practice of life drawing, as well as, for myself, drawing has been a huge part of my life. And I really have enjoyed the medium, and I've met some really creative, amazing individuals through this process. So this is my way of kind of, I guess, giving back and shedding light on, how to draw through the figure. So I guess to set the stage for yourself, if you can set aside maybe 30, 40, 50-ish minutes where you can just sort of focus and relax and grab like a tea or a coffee or whatever, put on some music. We'll just be going through some poses and sketching it out. I guess to note moving forward, if you're really open to learning and kind of growth and challenging yourself with this practice to get, with the idea of just to get better. This is for you, definitely. I'd also like to note, this isn't about nice drawings. This is about the process of drawing. So the end result, will be proof enough because you'll realize that how you're seeing things will change, and your approach to things will improve, and that just is essentially just practice. So I guess let's get at it. So each pose today will be 5 minutes in length. I will start with this one. So when I'm looking at poses like this, I usually, when I'm looking at poses like this, so essentially I'm going to draw a frame around the pose, and this helps with proportion. So I will intentionally draw a box around it, or kind of whatever shape that that you see within it. Obviously noting sort of the amount of lines that you're using, but this is just a start. So when I'm looking at this box, you really want to start, for myself, I usually try to find the hips as soon as possible. There's other aspects that sort of change the way that you would approach this drawing. You could start with the feet because it is sort of further away from the pose, but considering it's somewhat encapsulated, I would essentially start with the hips. And the hips, I'd usually start with a circle. From the hips, you can really kind of gauge a lot of things. That you have the legs kind of dropping down. You also have the torso kind of coming up. So within the circle, I would then probably go to the next area, which would be the legs in this case. So I would sort of approach the legs as like a cylinder, and then we would move down sort of like the pose and maybe find the next kind of like joint area. The feet, more often than not, sometimes they work, sometimes doesn't. I kind of would approach as a triangular shape. Moving back up through the torso, I would try to find the angles in which make the torso in this pose. It would generally be, I guess, somewhat of a box. So once I have the kind of torso in place, I would move to the shoulders, which again I would use as a landmark, either a circle or maybe sometimes a hash, just so I know where it begins. And then I would move to sort of the other areas of the wrist, down to the wrist. The key point about this is you could use tubes as well, but when you're looking at the wrist, you really want to note the angle in which the wrist is sort of facing, because that line can change and actually gives you a good indication kind of how to hook up the hand and the knuckle lines when you're in the pose. So moving to the neck kind of area, it would be a similar thing. You could do like a cylinder as well. Another important feature for myself is where the jaw is facing, because then obviously you get the where the face is facing, and that gives you an indication of sort of obviously where the eyes and sort of all the features, but structurally it helps you sort of lay on kind of ears very quickly, nose and lips. So yeah, I would sort of drop in the features, and then I would move to the hairline, and I'd begin to sort of fill out the pose with any sort of anatomical kind of detail. This is a little bit of a simpler pose, but it's the same sort of thing in regards to approach. You'd find your landmarks, and then you would sort of fill those spaces in. But it really helps initially for this practice. So our pose to start, this will be our first pose. And just to make sure, all right, everything's there. So all of the tools that I'm using, they'll be down below in the description. So if you want to, kind of see what I'm using, I would say that this is definitely not a tech-heavy session or sessions to follow. This is definitely very like sketchbook friendly. So if you could just, I mean, I'm using Sign. I'm using sort of a viewing program to go through this. That has a timer. So all right. Let's get rolling here. So our first pose. Just gonna make sure that I'll set up here canvas-wise. So I'm looking at this. Obviously, I'm going to start with a box. I think importantly, an important note as well is to always try to make sure that you're trying to find the grounding line. Sometimes we have drawings that are going to a vanishing point, but yeah, so for this one, it's just essentially like a vertical box. The outlier here, I would say for me, would be the foot. So I would actually start there. It helps me keep the drawing on the page, and then I would sort of move towards the hips. So I'd know I would have sort of a cylinder here, and the leg is going more or less towards the hip area, which is down here, and I think it's probably more like this. And as it attaches, so my next objective that I'm looking at is seeing where the other leg, which is in the foreground, how it attaches. So if I know that a circle is here for the hips, and I know that the front sort of abdomen area is here, I'm sort of going to gauge the angle in which this leg comes out, and I'm also noting the negative space. So the leg comes out here, there's a knee here, but I'm also trying to make sure that I'm not, I guess, falling out of proportion with what I'm looking at here. So the angles here are a little bit complicated. Looks like the foot comes in here, the ankle is here, so it's something similar to this. And then we'd move up the frame. We know that our chest is pressed more or less towards this vertical leg. And there's an arch, sort of like in her back curvature. I would note that where her shoulders are here, and I would move kind of up towards her ankle. And I know that the ankle, I know the wrist line is like this, set up here, and the hands would sort of move in like this. So the rest would be just sort of finding those shapes. I know that the shoulder muscles are there, and then we have the elbow down here, and then we have the traps, which are here. We know that there's another arm in the background, which you can't quite see. And then we're going to move to kind of the neck and angle of the face. Then we have the jawline. For the angle of the face, you can split it in half. Generally find the eye line, the nose, and the mouth. And then there's her eyebrow. Moving on to her nose, moving on to her mouth. And as it comes down like this, into her ear, it's like this. So, hair is flowing down about the mid-back. And likewise here, coming around. We know that her chest is more or less further up like this. Abdominals here. And looks like her pants are sort of coming on here. So I would sort of, the second pass, I guess, would be to establish, you know, more of the detail that's within this pose. Ankle is here, foot is here, attached. So leg kind of up like this. Chest, top is here. This neck. Have her back muscles over here. And we have her hands kind of attached. Her knuckle line is up here. She's grabbing her foot. Toes here. All right. So that's the first pose. The second pose that we're doing is here. And again, looking at, looks like it would be a little bit wider because her chest is coming forward. So this essentially would be the frame that we're working within. And I would look at this one, and I would also sort of note, usually the hips are within the middle of the box, if it is a vertical box. So I'd probably drop the hips in here. Pardon me. And then I would, again, note the positioning of sort of the farthest element that might be a little bit difficult to approach. So I would draw a line kind of here, and I would try to encapsulate or get this foot, or get this leg sort of in place. So let's put this thick, like this, coming up like this. Let's see, the foot is here. We're trying to plan to keep it on the page. So we also know that her hand is here, moving back down through the form. Maybe that's a little bit long. And we're sort of trying to twin in regards to maybe the joint structure to make sure that they're aligned. And then coming back down like this. Just like a straight line where we'd link up here. Yep, let's put that. And going to, so now that we have that in place, and it's important to note the angle in which your hips are facing. So I would say they're kind of facing, I guess, more or less in this direction. I'm trying to find the hip pointers here. And then this leg is about halfway down. And we have to note this gestural sort of structure as well to make sure that we're not kind of falling out of alignment with that. So then we have her ankle bone here. And we're moving towards her chest here, coming forth like this. Oh, up here. That is her arm. And then I would say her face is, her chin is just sort of like the, close to her armpit area. Maybe like this, proportionally. I'm just going to zoom out so that I have a little bit more space. I'm just going to sit up here. All right. So we know that her head sort of is this shape here, with a bun on the back. And then going through, position the eyes, nose, mouth. That's kind of how we would see her face, her chest here, and then her top. And again, like we're really trying to reference like when I'm looking at these, life drawing is very important in regards to what you're looking at. So the time spent drawing is almost about equivalent to the time you're spending looking at the figure. It's muscular here, and then this leg comes down like this. So it feels like this leg's a little bit longer. Toes. Abdomen. Like this. You can see her other arm in the back here. This moves up. And this arm comes up like this. So that's our second pose. I am going to find another layer to draw on here. Oh, wow. Okay. What are these drawings? They're there. Cool. All right. Eating into my own time. Yeah. So this pose here. Oh, forgot about that. There we go. Almost got it. So it's going to be somewhat of a more rushed pose because I'm chewing up some time, fiddling around with the interface. So I think about this size here, coming across, and I'm going to gauge maybe about, I don't know, so like 3/4 where this box is to draw the hips. And then the torso is kind of a box that drops down. So we have this area here, the hip pointers are here, the legs would come out, circle, and her thighs underneath point out towards where her feet are, out here. So circle, dropping down, and essentially a triangle. Yes. So this leg here is sort of coming out. You know that there's slight overlap where the calf is, and then the foot. Then we have that foot sort of here. And then we're moving down the body here. We're going to drop in these shoulders, even though we don't really see the other one. And we're going to note, as the arm drops down, the angle is sort of coming forward in space. We're going to note the wrist line is about like that. Our shoulders are here. Like this, And her head is kind of in this position. And we know that we can't see her other arm, but we can sort of guess, because it looks like the two forearms are parallel. It looks like her hand would mirror, for balance, where the other arm would be. A lot of time to noodle here. His fingers sort of come out towards you, like this. And then we have the hair kind of drop down, like this. So that's a hair shape. And then we can sort of move back in and make sure, I think, this comes out maybe a little bit more like that. So, and then we're just going to sort of maybe drop in the indication of clothes and whatnot coming across here. Some musculature running down the mid-back. Yeah, you'll notice the more that you do this, what you see begins to change, and actually your processing of what you're looking at really speeds up. And this is just sort of like, I guess, a visual sort of technique for individuals. I kept running into people saying that they'd really love to learn how to draw, but they don't know A, where to start, and B, how, they just felt that, maybe anatomy and getting things right would be an issue. And it just seems that, there's a lot of kind of, I guess, insecurities in regards to how to approach these things. And I just thought that finding the almost easiest way to answer all those questions, and obviously to improve, is to A, do it, and B, structure it out so that you are aware of kind of what you're looking at. And proportion is usually like a pretty big problem at times for some folks. So for this pose, it's going to be a box like this, and I'm going to follow the angle as it's going down. So again, I think I'm going to draw the hip kind of like where the hips would be placed about here in proportion to the frame of what I've put down. And then we're going to have the legs kind of come forth, pitch forth, and moving down to where the knees are. And going to draw this leg dropping. It's in flexation, so it's not quite a tube dropping down here. I want to make sure that, I think proportionally those are about the same size. And at the bottom here we have her foot sort of moving out in space. Back the leg here. So I'm going to continue along to where the torso is. These abdominals flowing along the same sort of line here. And her chest is here. So I'm going to drop in shoulders right about here. Drop them down like this. And they're on the same line as her heels, so that's important to note. And then it looks like her wrist line is sort of in that direction. So bicep coming forward. And actually might have to adjust this, her back, as it's coming up. So it looks more like that. Fingers sort of popping out here. And usually when something is very foreshortened, like these fingers here, you know, just dropping in like a tubular shape, oval, towards kind of camera, or towards, as it's coming towards you. So this back arm here, the wrists align, which is key. Looks like the one is sort of moving more into the background, So the thumb here, fingers here, and we have the other arm here, about that thick. So we have the neck, as it's here. We have the chin, which is about here. And the head, it looks like it's sort of drifting back here. And then again, we have mouth, nose, eye, eyebrow. So kind of like this, moving up. And the hair falling back here. The hairline just dropping down, and her shoulders, which are here, are like this, curling kind of up. So musculature in the shoulders here and in the tricep. And the other leg, we're imagining that the knee is here because it's sort of facing away from us. But we also have to note the negative shape within here. So I'm going to draw a line here. And the heel is a little bit above, but mid-ankle here. So this will be the shape of that back foot, like this. And then we can move towards this chest is here. All right, so the next pose. So this one is a little bit different shape. I'm gonna go with could probably go with almost like a perfect square to a degree. And I'm going to sort of draw a midline here because it looks like it's sort of a mirroring pose. And the hips are about here. So I'm going to start maybe dropping in the foot around here. And the heel is here. And the calf is about here. And again, it's like overlapping sort of shapes. I apologize for if you can hear the noise in the background. Hopefully that'll go away and it is not too distracting. So we have overlapping shapes kind of here. As it meets up to the hips. And this might be a little bit more difficult. So we have the hips here, which I think are a little bit too big, which is fine. But then we're just going to move up to where the torso is and noting the length of some of these lines here. I'm going to try to mirror onto the other side. I'm just going to try to drop a shape in for the torso. And note where her shoulders are. So we have that shape in there. So there's a curve here. It's about here, and it drops down here like this. Neck is here, generally, and the other shoulder. So dropping in. Foreshortening is very difficult. There's a lot more overlapping and drawing through when it comes to when you're drawing because you just have to account for how much things are overlapping. So we have her torso sort of back down here, and then it looks like her shorts are about like that, and her leg is coming up to where her shoulder is, and it cuts across. And we're just going to note where her hands are here. Yeah, so these are her fingers, finding the proper angles, like this. And then her head and neck is about here. Looks like she's sort of looking towards the side. Her ears. It's also important to note her foot. It's coming out like this. So at the bottom of her foot, drop in her hands here, finger angle. Sometimes I find for myself it's usually easier to draw the thumb and the pinky and then fill the rest in later. Because it's almost like you then can gauge the other fingers in between those. So hair here. Okay, leg is across. Like this. And then her clothes kind of come across like this. These aren't really important details, but they can slightly add to it. The musculature in the back, shoulder blades. And this pose looks very familiar. Okay. So I'm going to drop this down here. So for this one, again, a square coming across like this. So the first thing we try to do is find where the hips are. And if we note that there's a straight line here, we can generally find the hips sort of within this region. I'm going to draw the abdominal wall here and drop down to where her posterior is, like this, and about, yeah, a little ways down we have her sort of thigh, and then as we move down again we have her ankle, but her foot is keeping her leg above, and this is sort of where her ankle is. So it comes in. We're going to draw her foot kind of here at that angle, and then we're going to move sort of back up here and try to find where her torso angle is. Usually I'll try to draw a line almost like, yeah, just to kind of cap it off so I know what I'm working with. And then noting that negative shape that's dropping down and holding on to her just above her knees. And her elbow is right sort of about there. And moving up, her shoulders are right about there. So now we're not like impeding on this negative shape that we have. And I think her chest might be a little bit larger. But I'm going to move out from this direction, chest here. We have her rib cage drops to her hip kind of crest area. And then that sort of flows into here. So then we have her neck, which is about here, and her chin. Her head is sort of rocking back like this. You know the angle of her face. You can drop in a mouth, nose, and then eyes. Angle of the nose, and then we have angle of the mouth, and then her forehead, and her shoulders. And then we know that we have her ear, sort of here, her hairline, which is about like this. Maybe her ear is about there. And then we have the chest region here. And her rib cage, small of her back. And we know that she has another leg in the background as well. So we can twin it. Looks like its vanishing point is moving back that way. And then the mid sort of calf area is here, like this. Yeah. So we have this and this working. Her elbow here, coming down, wrist, and her wrist line here. Finger. So this would be what we're working with in this pose. For our shorts from this area. Alright, so there's that pose. Alright, so I'm going to go over here, maybe over here, yeah. And this is going to be obviously a wider shape. Drop a line down here, drop her foot down here. So about this shape. Pardon me. So I'm going to find the center line of this box, and usually the hips are about in the center. And we're going to split that because that's partly where her short is, and then her hip is sort of like this, and it's facing in this direction. So I'm going to draw the front part of her leg, back part of her leg, so it drops down. We have a circle here for the knee, and then we have her foot, or her calf, moving to her foot, which is about like that. This dropping down. Pardon me, looks like somebody is messaging me. And then we have this other leg coming out over here. And her, yeah, knee joint and leg and calf, or sorry, and ankle and foot. So I want to make sure that generally they're kind of the same. We can't really obviously pair them together, but I don't want to get too far away because then one leg will obviously look longer than the other. And then we have the torso kind of moving up like this, and the torso is positioned like this. Shoulders are here, and obviously these arms are just essentially going straight out, and it looks like her wrist line is about like that. It's reaching. Her thumb is going along for the ride. So then we can find maybe the midline here, move back to this midline, and then your underarm, so something like this. And then the same thing here, find the midline. And then more sort of like her tricep area is relaxed. And then her hand is kind of like facing in the background. So we have her arms, traps, and then her face, noting the negative shape here. It's kind of working like that. We know that her eye line, nose, and mouth. So eyes are here. Shape of the skull, kind of like that. Her lips are here. And her chin is like that. Here, it's about here. And we have sort of like her clavicle area, which is about like that. Her hair. So, her shirt coming down. You can sort of get more appropriate angles for the way her anatomy is in play here. Her shorts are like this. I think there's more or less like this pose. And I think actually potentially I'm sort of, I guess I'll get feedback from you guys if you want me to keep doing this structure of drawing, but I know that I want to move into more gestural kind of poses and whatnot, but having a good foundation in case, you know, get stuck with a particular pose is always good to have a good understanding. So we have this one here. All right, so this one might be a little more challenging. Top of the fact that there is a sun, sort of kind of drawing our attention in the pose. So if this is the square, and again, checking the length here, I'm going to say the hips are about sort of here. Maybe facing in sort of that direction. So this would be the top, almost like a box. And I'm going to move down to, actually, I could probably measure it out here. Maybe that's where the knee line is. This would be where the ankle line is, and I guess the foot would be almost off the page. So you're going to drop down here, and this is more or less straight. So you have this leg coming in here. Maybe this is further up. Then we have the other section here of the shin dropping down to where the ankle bone is. Like this, and then dropping down to the foot, which is here. The arch is there, moving back up. The other toes. So we also have the midline that we're dealing with here of the pose and the torso. So we have this torso kind of coming forth like this. Chest. We have her rib cage here. It's a little bit hard to see, but trust me, it is there. And then we have her shoulders here. So noting, I feel like this length is a little bit long, so I'm going to drop this shoulder line here. And then I'm going to draw the hand coming down here, which drops down a little bit lower than the knee, which we have, and then the forearm, which is about here, and then the hand, it's about there. We have the back muscles coming forward. We have the bicep moving into the forearm, which is here, kind of like this. There we go. Thumb and the fingers. And then we have this arm reaching back. And then we have this leg here, sort of pitching back. And then we have draw the top part of the leg. It looks like the calf, or the foot. And then we have the calf here. So we have this, her shorts, and then kind of like her bicep, and then holding on to her foot. And then we have her face, her neck here coming out, and the base of her head is about there. And I'm going to sort of draw I guess a circular shape. We know that her jawline is like here, facing this way. The front of her face is about here. Her ear is about there. We have her mouth, her nose, and her eye line. And we draw sort of a half moon. This is coming down here. The angle of her nose is like this. We have the angle of her shape of her lips, her chin, her cheek. So, let's say that's about the shape of her head. And we have her hair kind of coming forward like this. Yes, more or less. And then we have this really wide pose here. Just want to check and make sure I think I have a lot of real estate here. I could probably move back up here. So, again, drawing a box, and this pose is a little bit tricky. So we know that there's a midline, approximately. Draw an X here. Actually, proper X. This midline is about there. So we know that her hips are kind of more or less here. But we have, the pose is essentially split. So it's almost like, where do you want to start? And I think I may start with this leg over here. So if this is the front part of her hips, moving down, try to find the midpoint. We have the bulk of her leg kind of coming forward like this. This here, we have the calf here, coming down to her ankle bone. We have her foot kind of like this. And then we have her leg moving in like that. So that's one part. The second part here, moving up. We can't see her knee because it is behind her shoulder. And then we have the second section here to where her ankle is. And then moving up to where her foot is. Trying to find that proper angle. Looks like the bottom of her foot here. Shoulder dropping down like this. Now we have to find where her rib cage is. So I think the top of her rib cage essentially ends where her shoulders kind of coming almost vertically down. So we have her shoulder here, and then we have her bicep almost ending there. And then we have her forearm coming down, and it's essentially flat. and it is facing in this direction. So this is essentially that arm. We have to note the negative shape. So it looks like her ribcage is still kind of poking up here. His legs a little bit wider. Have her traps here. And her chest line here. Like this. And we have her face looking in this direction. So her neck like this. Yep. So I'm gonna have this other arm kind of coming up underneath like this, and then here. And this is essentially bicep, kind of coming in like that. Her fingers are wrapping around the foot. So we have her nose, mouth, eye maybe a little bit higher, kind of like this. And we have her ear. So it is essentially more or less like this. Her head might be a little bit janky there, just a touch. Go back and resolve that. Clothing here, coming down. Hips are very coming down like this. A little bit tricky. Like that. Okay, maybe we won't have time to sort of go back. And this pose here. All right, this is definitely the challenge. Gauntlet has been thrown. So we have this, drawing a box, essentially. So I'm going to gauge and say that the hips are about mid-level of this box. You know that this is the obviously facing the front. Her hip is about like this. So we have a lot of foreshortening here. And foreshortening essentially is asking us to draw through the figure. Oh, looks like my program had a little mistake here. And mistakes are okay because I'm just going to keep soldiering forward. So we're drawing through this area here. So we have the sort of the thigh coming up, and then we have the shin here, and then we have this other thigh here, more or less, and then the knee is about here, but then right over top of it is the shin, is her lower leg. I apologize. And then we have her foot kind of coming forward like this. And the thing is, I think for some people, when they see a lot of foreshortening, it's confusing because you want to represent sort of the shapes that you're seeing, but you don't know sort of in the format in which you should represent them. And it's definitely a different sort of way to look at it, but you have to draw through the form to kind of give proper representation so that you have the proper volume. Looks like her foot here is facing forward. We don't necessarily see her toes. And then there's an arching sort of shape coming forward here. And her shoulder is right about there. So we have her shoulder, torso, chest, we have her face, here. Looks like her lats and her back. Her chest is about here. And then it looks like her forearm is kind of like this, at this angle. Shoulders here. Forearm is here. Her wrist is like there. Then we have her fingers. It looks like they're sort of relaxed, splaying out in this direction. And we know that, I think there's more, yeah, so this shape there, the fleshy areas there. This is essentially the same thing. We're going to draw a box at the base here, and then we're going to draw, I had one teacher, I think I said this before, but for fingers he would just refer to them as sausages. So I'm just going to draw some sausages. I think that's the thumb. So yeah, giving the indication of things. So for her face, I'm going to draw the midline here and draw her eye line, nose line, and mouth line. And the angle of her jaw is more or less like that. And there's her nose here, mouth straight across here, and it looks like her eye line is about like this. In proportions for faces can be a little bit dubious. I'm kind of going through this a little bit quicker because I only have 5 minutes per pose. But you want to essentially nail the landmarks and then essentially move into maybe add a little more detail over top of them. Because if you start with detail, you're going to get in trouble. So you just gotta, because you're overcommitting essentially if you start with too much detail. So there's that pose. So I am going to stop there. And I'm going to step through the rest of these poses. In the next video, I will have these poses at the start and I'll continue. But for your sake, until that's uploaded, you can, kind of continue along. You can pause the video and kind of draw the rest of these poses. Balancing pose. That looks like a tough pose. Well, got the sun again, but still it's a nice, again, that's definitely another, a lot of layering going on there. The balancing pose, very flexible. Extraordinarily flexible, yeah. And that's a nice pose. So yeah, I would definitely finish off there. And I would say, during this, kind of process in regards to what we're doing, it's just, staying consistent, staying aware of kind of the shapes and angles that you're working with. And I guess this one, try not to overcommit to too much detail. Anyways, thank you so much for following along. And I guess I will see you next time. Take care.